Hi guys, welcome to week number 2 of our course. When I just got through recording the virtual lecture for week number 1, and I turned around and I looked at it, and this is my home office, so there's a red wall, and I'm wearing a red University of Maryland Terps shirt. So I thought, you know what, I've got school spirit, but this is a little much, so sorry if it's hard on the eyes. And that picture you see back there is the Red Sox. So we have red wall, red socks, and red shirt. Hope it's not too distracting. So welcome to week 2. I'm sure if you haven't already, you'll note that from the readings that we're moving from the basics of writing to more of a planning phase. And planning is critical to being an effective writer. Much of chapter 7 and 8 in Treadwell deal with design, graphic design, and that's not really conducive to this particular format. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about graphic design, which I think is important. But as you're studying the chapters, try to think about how you can use some of the techniques in that to your own writing. Okay, so let's move on. Business writing. As you're writing for different audiences in your job, in your vocation, in your avocation, think about the fact that readers are impatient and they receive thousands and thousands of messages every single day. And the message might be the newspaper that they're reading, might be the text that we actually use for this course, or it might even be a bumper sticker on the car in front of you as you're sitting in traffic. And this all adds up to thousands of messages, and it makes people impatient. They kind of want to get to the point quickly. So your job as a writer or a public relations practitioner is to get people engaged, to get them to read your message and absorb your message. So the kind of the components of a plan for writing for public relations involve 7 different things. So you're going to think about and plan for, number 1, your publics, number 2, your outcomes, number 3, your media that you choose, number 4, your budget, number 5, the timing, number 6, the evaluation in terms of how you're going to measure success, and number 7, the message content. Now, last week we talked about writing for discrete audiences, the people, and for different outcomes in terms of what you want them to do. But just to go back and to review for a second, remember that people have to, number 1, receive the message, remember the message, believe the message, have the intent to act upon the message, and then finally to actually act upon that message. So that's going to cover writing for the people and writing for the outcomes. But let's talk a little bit about planning for media and methods. The choices that you make to select the right media should be based upon your target audiences, just like a lot of the other planning you do. And some examples of this are if you need to reach discrete audiences, very small groups of people, broadcast media, which is for the, mass consumption, might not be the way to go. Or if you need to tell a compelling story and really get people engaged, video or graphics or things like that might actually be appropriate. And think about why I use this particular medium in terms of recording video versus just maybe putting a PowerPoint or a Microsoft Word document out. Let's talk about planning for cost and budget. You need your media choices to fit your budget. And I spent 15 years on the agency side in public relations for 3 global firms. And I can tell you that many a time we said that clients could have champagne taste and a beer budget. And that would just mean that the media or the tactics that they want to select have absolutely nothing to do with the budget that they have available. So you have different options. You have earned media, which is you come up with a story, you pitch the story to the media, you try to get writers to write about it, you try to get people talking about it, but you can't control the message that goes out. And in fact, you can't even control whether or not it gets picked up in the story. So, well, this is free, and a good pitcher can get stories placed. You have very little control over it. Now, on the opposite end, advertising, which is called paid media, you have control over the message, you have control over how it's laid out, you have control over the timing, you have control over the outlets, and you have control over a variety of different other things. Now, this is highly effective, but you might actually sacrifice some credibility because the people who are reading the messages know that this is advertising. And if you get a chance, look up the word advertorial, which is kind of a mix of earned and paid media that has higher credibility, but sometimes you're kind of trying to get people to think it's earned media, but when you're actually paying for it. Timing is the next thing that it's important to think about, and it is related to the urgency of your message. Timing could affect reporters. Generally, you're not going to try to pitch something when reporters are on deadlines, and part about being a good practitioner is determining when the deadlines are for the reporters. On the other end of the spectrum, there's something like annual reports, which, hello, they're annual. So you're going to know way, way, way far out when an annual report's going to go out, and you can plan for that and work around it. In crisis communications, you might be typing a message on your BlackBerry or doing a press release in your BlackBerry at 3 o'clock in the morning. Timing is critical then, and the media won't wait for you. So whether or not your message is going to reach the media might depend upon when you get it to them. And if it's 3 a.m., it's 3 a.m. So the crisis will dictate the deadline there. And when you're in terms of people actually receiving the message, email is by far the fastest way to get it to people. Media interviews might take a little bit longer, and how and when you're going to pitch stories to the media depends upon how and when they want to receive it. Now, the next thing you want to think about is evaluation, and I can't talk about how important this is, because to truly measure the effectiveness of a media plan, you need to evaluate it and you need to measure it. So when you're planning this, think about what you want the outcome to be and think about the criteria that you're going to use to measure it. Because you got to know how to measure that success. You might have to justify additional budget. You might just want the information for your own purposes. But knowing where you were before you started communicating and where you are on the other end will tell you, was I successful in picking the right outlets? Was I successful in the timing? Was my writing good? All of these things are important. And if you get a chance, look at the writings of Katie Payne, Payne. She is the queen of measurement for public relations. She has a blog, and she writes a lot about how you're going to measure the messages that go out. But measurement in public relations is a much deeper topic that we're not going to cover right here. That's it. In this week, we've moved from kind of a nuts and bolts about writing, grammar, things like that, to how you're going to go through and how you're going to plan for writing for public relations. And I'd encourage you to think a lot about those 7 things that we looked at as you're writing your own papers, as you're writing the assignments for this class, because that's something that's important. And good planning for a paper can be the result between a grade you'll be happy with and perhaps a grade that you won't be happy with. So I'm going to sign off from my very red room here in my home office. I hope that you enjoyed this lecture. I hope you enjoyed the readings, and we'll see you next week. Bye.